down to like 450 drivers, I think the count was. And we were like, wow, this is obviously a big hit.
And I think that enabled us to come straight out the blocks and be the leading operator in the city. I think as well as we were very aggressive with our retention. Everyone looked at each other and actually thought, is this going to kill us as a company?
You just roll over and die? No. You dig in, you do what you think's right. Like we said, whoever puts the most effort in here can win the race coming out of COVID when that eventually comes. Driven Podcast, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of Alpha and gives you real insight into how our business operates. Today we're going to talk about COVID and how our business adapted.
Well, a lot of people didn't know how bad the pandemic was against our company. Like, I think there was a couple of questions that we asked ourselves throughout the pandemic was, will this kill Alpha? Obviously, we've got a great team on hand. We've got a lot of technology like cloud-based products. That then allowed us to move forward and bring our company forward outside of the pandemic.
Yeah, I think when you think back, obviously, the first thing was businesses closed, schools closed, everything else. People were scared, obviously, of catching the virus and things. So I think our key point, we had to adapt. The main thing was obviously keeping the call centre open and getting to every single call, and also supporting customers in the sense of giving them reassurance.
Getting to every call is quite important actually, because a lot of other operators made very difficult choices to close their call centres down, remove management from the company, and we seen loads of new customers, primarily from the north of Liverpool, ringing us up. We're able to see on our booking record whether a customer's used us before. We found a lot of customers that were using us was first time use. This would have been a lot of customer base from other operators who had decided to close their booking parameters down. A lot of very wrong decisions were made from other operators. Now, us as a company, I think we moved forward with ours. I think it made us grow stronger. Obviously, we were able to use the cloud-based, like you mentioned, products to either remove customers from offices and put them in their homes, which obviously allowed us to carry on taking phone calls, which is very important for customers.
We were like 1,200 cars pre-COVID. Obviously, we're bigger than that now, but at that time, we'd just done an acquisition the week before, and obviously COVID hits. In the peak of it, we were down to like 450 drivers, I think the count was, and we were like, wow, this is obviously a big hit. We doubled down, we worked extra hard, everyone pulled all the stops out and all the things we've done. And at the time, it's a lot more uncertain. It's okay looking at it now thinking, oh, we've done well when we come out of it and all the things we've done were great. But at the time, it was uncertain and we all just dug in and done what we thought was right.
Yeah, I remember the time when everyone looked at each other and actually thought, is this going to kill us as a company? The 2 years literally flew. But I think it was because we were working so hard and we were focused on our social media. We were focused on a lot of feature points that we were adding at the time. I think the whole 2 years just literally flew over.
And you just roll over and die? No, you dig in, you do what you think's right, and you have a go. You'd rather go out fighting than giving up, and I think we obviously reap the rewards for all of that. Similarly to the badge process becoming all online, and obviously drivers not having the need for physical appointments anymore, which we helped with through COVID. Obviously we noticed and we appreciated that our automation level would have to go up, so that's a major component to that. So obviously we looked at our offerings with the tech and improved them. I think in a lot of other industries there's a lot more automation, and we've embraced that, and we always look at the features associated with that to try and improve the service.
But what we found is a lot of the features that we put in place was utilised by customers, and not only did it stay at a level, it actually increased. So digital payments such as like card bookings and stuff actually increased, and it's obviously brought us a lot more forward to the digital world, probably by about 5 years, I think. I think another thing as well is we were very aggressive with our retention. What I mean by that is that drivers were able to carry on with their badges. So we were offering assistance to drivers who telling us that they didn't want to ever come back to the industry. You know, they were telling us that they had great jobs delivering food or delivering goods, you know, groceries to people's houses. And we were just constantly there, sticking with them and saying, look, let's get your badge renewed. This process isn't going to last forever. Obviously, when we'd done that, when we did come out of the lockdown, a lot of our drivers still had their license. We were able to go straight back into the booking and being able to get customers taxis a lot easier. Obviously, a lot of other operators didn't survive that. They weren't on top of retention scheme, which meant that the local licensing authorities who had shut down and gone onto online based, they weren't able to get drivers licensed quick enough for when we did come out of lockdown. And I think that was a big factor for Alpha, the fact that we were able to go straight back into a full volume of bookings.
Yeah, I think a key point to add to that is obviously we always followed guidelines and the rules, but what we did is we embraced the problems and we said, how can we continue to operate here? How can we look after the safety of passengers? How can we look after the safety of drivers? Obviously, yeah, you touched on the renewals for badge renewals, which drivers were struggling because councils were closed, and drivers obviously have to renew the badge every so often. We can obviously assist and help them with the admin of that, the documentation, just to help people who maybe struggle or maybe not, because everything people forget now, because obviously it's more prevalent now, but back then everything wasn't online. There was, drivers might have physically had to go in for an appointment, then it changed to online. Some drivers didn't have email addresses, so on and so forth, which we obviously helped them and assisted them to set up, and so they could renew the badge. So that was one thing in terms of the keeping the amount of drivers on board. Obviously, to help drivers as well, slashed totally our weekly service fees down to next to nothing. It was a case of, look, we just need to keep drivers earning. Obviously, their earning potential in the takings were massively impacted because the amount of less journeys available, but we were taking nothing for a certain amount of time, and then over time as the amount of journeys increased, we would reassess, what we were charging out to drivers. I think a key thing as well is, obviously for the customers, we've got our own garage facility, so we decided to order a lot of plastic of a certain thickness to create that barrier from the driver to the passenger to stop the spread. Well, every driver that was working did this. We obviously done that free of charge, invested at the time, but again, it was drivers in work and to keep passengers being able to get from A to B for the shops or whatever they needed to get. Also, we added the Alpha Grab function. Now, we knew Alpha Grab was not going to be a long-term success story. It was more about facilitating extra journeys in COVID. Obviously, taxis are more expensive than a food delivery would be, so we obviously heavily subsidised the fares ourselves. So we set up a food delivery platform essentially with restaurants. Obviously, a lot of people would, instead of eating out because they couldn't do it, ordering takeaways or food delivery, and we would facilitate that and drop that off to customers who ordered food. But we would incentivise that, so the customer might get charged, for example, £2, but we'd pay the driver £5 because that was the journey total. It was about maintaining size, maintaining journeys, and obviously keeping people earning. In terms of the market share in COVID, we thought, and we had a collective chat between us, didn't we, where we said whoever puts the most effort in here can win the race coming out of COVID when that eventually comes, because obviously we'll retain a certain element of market share and hopefully grow that. And obviously, yeah, we weren't seeing in passenger numbers during COVID because it was massively down, but we grew our customer base. We had a wider following, and then coming out of COVID, obviously we could hit the ground running.
Yeah, pre-COVID, obviously Alpha weren't the biggest operator. What I feel like it's done is it's brought us all back to the start line, and it's been like whoever is the best is going to lead the race going forward. Now, I don't think there was any competition. I think when we come out of COVID, everything, all the hard work that we've done, everybody in the office still, key managers still working round the clock, and I think that enabled us to come straight out the blocks and be the leading operator in the city.
Just adapted a lot better. We had better systems. We done the screens, we done things with tech, we invested. And I think other firms just shut up shop and went, I want to keep the cost down because the money's not coming in terms of the turnover. Obviously turnover reduced massively, but our output went up. So yeah, it was a bit of a loss leader. We spent more money during COVID as a business. We didn't make any money, but that was an investment for the future, and we got our rewards when we increased our market share coming out of COVID at the end. I think a good point to add to that as well, the feedback we had was great. It was actually, we had a lot of feedback off drivers just saying what you've done during COVID has been great. You've looked after the drivers really well. The drivers would have known how much we were spending, what we weren't earning because we weren't charging. But obviously customers as well, I think they appreciated the screens. And although you don't see that as a direct result at the time, over time I think people remember and people think actually they looked after us there, or they pulled out the extra stops, which obviously is why we were able to hit the ground running coming out of COVID.
What a lot of people I think don't realise is that number of drivers that we actually lost throughout the pandemic. Now obviously you've got the likes of drivers who are a lot older, have a lot of existing health conditions, who find it a lot more difficult to be out with the general public. Mm-hmm. We did lose a lot of them drivers, and I think we had that bigger problem of replacing that driver or keeping that driver work and keeping that driver's license badge for when we do come out of the pandemic. I think we've done that really well.
That feeds back into where you're assisting them with the badge renewals, and obviously as it all went online, as I touched on before, we were helping them do the online applications. When you think about it, there was other jobs as well that were hard, like Asda and food deliveries and whatever, old Amazon, because obviously everything went crazy on that front. So we lost a few drivers to that, although some of them drivers might have still renewed, come back once that sort of rush was over and the passenger demand for taxis risen again. I think customer behaviour has changed slightly since COVID, and I think that goes probably across a lot of different sectors, especially we're tightly aligned with the hospitality sector on weekends.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of customers, they used to predominantly go out to the city centre every weekend. I think what I find now is people are still using taxis. However, rather than going to the city centre later of an evening, they're going to the city centre earlier in the afternoon, around 6 o'clock. Yeah, I think that the hospitality industry as a whole has completely changed since COVID. The type of bookings that we get, you know, a lot of them go from residential property to residential property. And
COVID didn't just change our business, it changed a lot of people's lives, obviously the way they live their lives day to day. We notice now in terms of the passenger numbers which you just spoke about on the weekend and the profile being different, but also I think people are more health conscious now. It was all health related, I suppose, COVID, wasn't it? So I think there's numerous factors in where people have changed their habits and their lifestyle throughout all industries, especially in the hospitality sector. So that concludes today's episode. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back again next week.